Hello, it's Thursday, the 31st of October in the year of our Lord 2024. We're back with episode 3 of our election week special, talking to our friends from across the pond. Delighted that this lovely lady who's been so supportive of all of our podcast-a-thons, and she's been a previous guest.
Sorry.
She's the wonderful host of the Trend On Show, Tamara Leigh. Hello.
Hello. Wonderful to be back with you.
Thank you so much for coming back. Now, we're talking about the biggest election, probably in American history. I mean, if it goes the wrong way, you're looking at communism. It's going to affect the whole entire world. What are you seeing? What are your thoughts on this election? Is election day going to go ahead? And
This is
let's
what?
discuss.
Okay. Off the bat, and thank you for having me back on. It's crazy we've been at this for almost a decade, right? Who would have ever thought back when we all first engaged in the 2015, which I was
Yeah.
in for Trump right away in the primaries. Like I just loved that he was outside the political world, that he was a candidate that I feel the founders intended to be non-career politicians. You serve your country because you're a stakeholder and from the lay population, not career politicians. And so I was behind him right away and, worked really hard and knocked it out 24/7. And then it went from bad to worse to horrible. And here we are, looking at the same thing. My gut instinct, and I'll put this out for your audience, based on no confirmed insider information whatsoever. This is my gut. Having watched each of the elections from 2016, 2018, 2020, 2022, and now here we are at 2024, and being engaged at a higher level probably than most Americans at the national level. My gut instinct is that each of the elections over the past 10 years since 2016, that Trump and his team, whether it's the white hats with the military, whether it's just Trump and he's a regular, there's no outside military operation, right? So even if you take it out of that school of thinking that exists in our engaged politics these days, in America, or, that there is an operation at hand. Either way, I think in 2016, Trump's team was so strategic in getting the electoral victory in the electoral college, and it caught Clinton, it caught the Democrats, it caught the Rhino establishment off guard that Trump was so dialed in. I think they discredited him as a serious candidate, and he used that to his advantage, that they weren't taking him seriously when he was laser precise in the calculations needed to win that election. So they were caught off guard, and then they recovered. And by 2018, they were at least aware of how to counter any kind of gains made by Trump and his campaign and the MAGA movement. And having been involved in 2016 in what was kind of quotation marks tweeters for Trump, to the point of that we had learned how to engage on Twitter at the time, the platform that I think totally caught the left off guard, because the social media and technology was supposed to be the realm of the left, and Obama and using it effectively in 2008 and 2012. And so I think they're biased, blinded them to think that, oh, mega conservative Trump supporters could engage with technology to the point of where we were so strategic, utilizing Twitter and DM rooms and messaging and trending hashtags. And I was part of this group at the national
That's what I
level.
was, sorry to interrupt, love. Just
Yeah.
I should have said this at the beginning. Just for the listeners, because you were politically, you were very, very involved. Just let the listeners know a little bit how you were involved and what you were doing, just to get to know you. I should have started that off.
Yeah. So just real quick background. I had launched a podcast, Tamara Lee's Trend On, back in 2012 with a group out of Chicago, Linked Local Network, which is where I met Brent Hamachek, who later became my co-host, who you know, and has been a guest on your show, I believe. And so but it had nothing to do with politics. His show was a business show. Mine was just a kind of, I named it Trend On so I could really talk about whatever I wanted, because the group out of Chicago is wanting to get ahead. If we jump in our time, back to the future, back in 2011, 2012, streaming was a new phenomenon. Podcasting was a new phenomenon. Now I'm getting caught on my words. Anyway, so this
I
group
know
out of
what you mean.
wanted to get
Phenomenon.
it. Yeah, there you go. Wanted to get ahead of streaming and just content and social media, and all that was relatively like the Wild West, New Frontier. So we both ended up doing that. And then Brent connected with Charlie Kirk and was, involved in Turning Point USA's formation. And because of our connection at the Link Local Network and became good friends through it, I followed what was going on with that. And then in 2015, someone a group had approached me about doing a political podcast. And I thought, well, I better start paying closer attention. And so I just dove in and ended up, my podcast being able to just talk to incredible people. And it really was very, I think, a God thing of directing and putting me in places where I needed to be in my background. And like when Trump said, drain the swamp, I wholeheartedly believe the swamp is in our backyard because I've lived it. And they swim upstream to Washington. So because I had the podcast and the platform and then got involved and then ended up in these tweeters for Trump and these DM groups and then Politico did articles and just really very much God's moving and directing, I feel like, opportunities that came my way. And then ended up connecting with, in 2016, I was so mad at Paul Ryan that he was going to throw the state of Wisconsin for Trump because he's such a rhino, never Trumper. I got involved in a campaign here with a failed candidate, Paul Nealon, to run against Paul Ryan. But the good thing was that he at least gave some competition to Ryan. And I connected with Derek Hankerson, and that led one thing to the other, connected with Pasquale Scopoliti, who was a great analyst who was working with General Flynn on the engagement of the veteran community back in 2015, 2016. And Pasquale and I connected and ended up, once General Flynn was charged, I had the social media platform. Pasquale had the analysis and strategy. And so together we co-created the Pardon Flynn Now campaign, social media movement that resulted in General Flynn's pardon of innocence. And I created the concept at the federal level of the pardon of innocence, Pasquale and I, when you have corrupt courts that are not going to self-correct. And so then we just saw increased weaponization of the judicial system leading up to and after January 6th. And then David Summerall we connected along the way, and he and I worked, and I wrote articles with David on stophate.com on the January 6ers. And now, because of that work with the Pardon Flynn Now movement, Pardon of Innocence, I've worked with Suzanne Monk on the J6 Pardon Project for the January 6ers, so that day one, President Trump has a complete document of all the J6ers who need the pardon of innocence, pardon of mercy, so that they can be released from their confinement anyway until it gets sorted through from their weaponized judicial system of political hostages, persecution, prosecution. So that's all kind of running parallel to the podcast and other things that I do. So yeah, and then with Brent as my co-host, we went to video probably sometime 2018, 2019, Brent Hamachek. And then I connected with Dr. Zelenko, had him on the show, Brent and
Yeah, same.
Dr. Zelenko, then ended up writing the book before he died. Pasquale passed away. It's coming up on 2 years now, which is hard to believe, but just an incredible analyst and brilliant political mind. So that's the backstory of where my perspective.
So going back to my question, do you think the election will go ahead?
Well, if we do a weave like Trump does, where he talks about other things and then comes back to the starting point of where he was at. So what my gut instinct is that in 2016, Trump's team very dialed in on strategically winning that. And there's examples I can point to that support that, of like being at CPAC in 2016 in, DC, and Trump was supposed to be a keynote speaker Saturday. And that was still in the primary. There was still, Cruz was still in, Ben Carson had just announced he was dropping out. And Trump went to Iowa ahead of the Iowa caucuses. So things like that. So I believe that caught him off guard, 2016. 2018, they were a little bit on their heels that they needed to pay better attention. I think Trump at a press conference said, it was important to win, and I can't remember if it was the Senate or the House, but Trump was happy. We lost one, gave up one maybe to gain the other. And then in 2020 with the steel, I feel like all of these and all the data from 2020 that has come out about the different ways that they stole, I think David did a little clip on how to steal an election, or somebody did, of like, do this, don't do that, do this, from the ballot boxes. And we have all the different experts who have come out since then, of whether it's Jovan Pulitzer with the paper ballots and the watermarks, or Seth Keshel and the data and the ghost, the statistics of how they inflated voter rolls, Dr. Frank about the voter rolls and pulling them back after the election, Tina Peters taking the screenshots of the machines. What's the one on the Dominion? I'm drawing a blank on his name, out of
Yeah,
Colorado.
yeah.
So the Dominion guy, who was on that call with Antifa, where the head of Dominion said, no bleeping way Trump's going to win, because they're going to make sure of it with the machines. All of these things, to Dinesh D'Souza and his 2,000 meals, all the different ways in 2020 that they were able to identify how the cheat is, and not just identify it, know it, but expose it. But
So
they
one of the guys behind the Dominion machines is a Lord Malloch Brown. And Lord Malloch Brown is also CEO of the Open Society, Soros's Open Society. I know his son's taken the lead, but Malloch Brown's totally involved. He was also involved in a project called the Oceanic Project. And Boris Johnson's sort of like bit on the side, who's now his wife, Carrie Simmons, she worked alongside Malloch Brown on the Oceanic Project, and the Oceanic Project was linked to Ghislaine Maxwell's Taramar Project.
it's also interconnected. I mean, it's
All of it. Sorry, continue.
yeah. So I feel like that information had to be shown to the public, right? And January 6th was really about the election still, the first people to go, so that when to redress our government, so the election wouldn't be certified, because there were problems throughout the country on the election results. So then you had the orchestrated chaos disrupt the process. The evidence isn't entered into the congressional record. Late at night, in the dark of night, after everybody's gone home, they certify the election and install Biden administration. And my gut is that all of these things were allowed to take place, and all of it's been exposed and tracked. And that now I feel in 2024, all the traps have been set and they're ready to spring. And so they will cheat, they will pull shenanigans. I mean, they shut down the whole world for the sake of being able to, with COVID,
Exactly.
kill people for that objective. And And I feel like now for the world to see, the traps have been set and the spring is going to snap down and they won't be allowed to steal the election and get away with it. And Trump has posted out things on Truth Social of, you know, prosecutions of, there's, Heard Pennsylvania had fraudulent ballots, the Swift
Yeah.
with legal action or prosecution. So he's floating out those. And I take my cues from Trump. I watch what he and his campaign are doing. And that's both a positive and, if I guess you could say, a negative, in that you watch what he's saying, like justice this time, or they're not going to get away with it, or we have it all. Those are things that are in place. And then the other side of it is you watch his demeanor, like last night at his rally in Green Bay, where he did the entire event in the little garbage, vest.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was
Trolling,
beautiful.
the master trolling, and you watch his demeanor. He's calm, cool, and collected. He's relaxed. I don't think he's worried about it being stolen. I think there's a sense of all things are in hand and under control. And if he says we have it all, I believe it. So that's where my thinking is. Now, what happens after the election? Well, and he even said, and Elon Musk has floated that out too, of we'll know ahead of November 5th what the results are. So there won't have to be, it's math. I remember I remember having a German TA in college in a statistics class, and I was arguing about my grade with him, and he's like, "It's maths, in plural, like you say in Europe. It's maths. It either adds up to this or it doesn't add up to that." And
Yeah, exactly.
and I think, they have all the capability with the technology to triangulate algorithms to know exactly how many voters in a precinct, who's, you can cross-check that with Social Security, driver records, everything. It's not an X factor of no one can know exactly how many votes and voters are in a given precinct. It's math.
Yeah,
So I feel
exactly.
like by Tuesday, they will have the math in place that if, say, 80% of the precinct has reported in and Trump is, got a significant victory, and no matter how that 20% remaining vote is divided between the candidates, Trump's victory is secured. So I feel like they've got it all figured out down to the vote and the math. That's my gut.
You saying about how you watch him, it's also that the other people that who have on stage. Now I know there's been uproar about from that because of Tony Hinchcliffe from the Kill Tony show saying about is it Puerto Rico or Cuba that they're saying? Was it Cuba? Was a floating was garbage. There's a big floating island of garbage, and I think they call it
Oh,
Cuba. I
Puerto
think that's
Rico?
what Puerto
Is it
Rico, yes. Well, that's clever because it's now people are going to go over and have a look at Puerto Rico and they're going to see the issues that are going on over there. Do you know what I mean? So
Oh, yeah.
yes, it was
When Trump,
it was in this day, and he's a comedian. You
right.
know, people are so. I was brought up sticks and stones. And you banter. It's you banter, and he's telling but it is. It's raising awareness now. Hopefully, to Cuba. And
Yeah.
I think the team that he's got around is brilliant. What's your thoughts on JD Vance? The more I listen to him, the more I'm actually liking him.
My jury is still out on JD Vance. He's articulate. He's well spoken. He says he had a change of heart regarding Trump. I do not agree with I listened to their verbiage around how they define J6, either defending it or throwing J6ers under the bus, and I'm not happy with what I heard
Oh,
of
really?
way of talking about J6ers, because that was one of the things David and I worked on immediately after January 6, 2021. We said we can't let their verbiage stick. And so when they came out, that day, Biden with insurrectionist, violent mob, David and I set out to make sure that we, from writing history, the journalistic battle of January 6th, that we made sure that the written history, Written, was righted Rightted,
Yeah.
in that the words matter. And anyone who came out after January 6th, like a Ted Cruz who said, oh, it was a violent mob, no, we don't forget that. You
No.
were,
So what was
you
JD
were.
Vance's stand on it? What was Vance's stand on it
I
then?
think initially he was that the J6ers were a violent mob. And
Wow,
whatever he
I have.
said
You see, I haven't heard
recently,
his stance on it.
yeah, I heard a clip recently that I was like, okay, that's the wrong language to be coming from him regarding January 6th, and somebody on his team should correct him with the proper answer that he needs to say whenever he's asked about January 6th, that he's got one that doesn't throw the January 6ers under the bus. So,
Agreed.
uh,
Who would have been your, if you could pick, who would have been Trump's running mate?
I didn't really have a horse that I had picked. My gut again was that it was not going to be a female. It was not going to be a minority. It would be somebody that Trump would feel very capable of handing over the reins to running the country, either should he step down or in the event of something happened, right? So in that regard, Vance would fit the bill, although he's young, but then he captures that younger demographic. However, um, I feel like last minute pick two, is he a handler like Bush was to Reagan, or was Pence a handler to Trump? And the first time, did he have to take Pence because the Uniparty forced it, and he needed the RNC at the time to pull in the victory? So my jury is still out on Vance, and the fact that he had the Netflix hillbilly elegy, that was, Obama's ties
Yeah,
with
that is, yeah,
Netflix.
you're agreed on,
It's
yeah.
just a little like, that's a little coincidental. Here he has this, already packaged up past biography. Now I could be totally wrong in being skeptical about him, and he could be great, and he could have had a genuine change of heart. He's certainly well spoken, but I just,
I had a bit of funny little vibes with the wife. Don't know what it was, but it was just something about maybe her the way, her body language and some of her facial expressions, when she's been brought out on stage, and you can just, or when she's like even just in the background, you can, I don't know, there's some things that makes me a bit twitchy, but I've watched some of his interviews. I like the way he's standing up to the mainstream media. He's got quite a stance on what kids should be talking, what we with the kids in schools, and the whole transgender thing. um so, well, that's, I've seen a couple. I saw the one with Theo Vaughan, his
well,
interview
and
with
what
him.
did Tucker Carlson say? Trust your gut. When you have gut feelings about things, trust your gut.
Yeah,
So if you have a gut reaction, to be skeptical, I think you trust your gut, that there's some
yeah.
reason why you're a bit skeptical. It doesn't mean you're not open to being wrong about it, or, being able to move your opinion to a different position of not skeptical and being okay. But I think listening to that skepticism inside your head is a good thing.
After the assassination attempt, he, do you think he was, because there was I can't remember the name of the prophet. I know it was at a Reawaken America tour, and they were in the
Oh,
canteen, and Amanda Grace was there, and he had, um, the Lord had given him a word, and or no, he had a
a
vision
man?
about exactly that.
Is it oh, not,
About what
not
happened, and I
Clement.
think it was in the March he had that vision. I can't remember his name now.
Yeah, I saw one about it, and I don't,
Yeah, and then
that,
he said that Trump would go down and be radically come up back for Jesus. um what are your thoughts
well, so
on
my thought,
that?
and I'm a believer, and um my thought a little bit with people being too quick to say, oh, we're in the end times. I mean, there's a lot of things that you could say, yes, we're in the end times. Um, But again, is that predictive programming that we create the environment around because the idea has been put out there? And so we move towards that? Or d- my belief is that we don't know. And one, what does the end times look like? And God has shown many, many times in scripture of where he's had a change of heart and extended grace and mercy upon a people rather than punishment given given the people's repentance and coming back to him. So I'm not one to say, oh, this is how it's going to go, because here we are in Revelations, because which is cause effect, sort of like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. He seems to be talking a lot more um about his faith, and
Well, and I think that's
I do believe he's God's David,
yes,
for this time. I do. I follow Julie Green. I've had Deborah Williams on the show. I've had Julie Green on the show, Amanda Grace, Robin Bullock, and they're spot on. They are spot on. You go back over, and obviously Kim Clement.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I was just at the Reawaken tour in North Carolina with the group with the American Gulag Chronicles and 1A Film Fest. And I do think it's not just Trump, but within the movement, whether it's Christian nationalists, there definitely is the returning to God and country and a moral society of realizing that abandoning our Judeo-Christian values has not served the country well. And then you have, I think Laura and Eric Trump, Laura Trump being much more of a seemingly evangelical Christian, or at least more foundational in her beliefs. So that's bringing, Eric. I think Trump is old school in terms of faith was more of a private experience, right? It guided and molded your character, and a man's handshake was his word, and things like that. Old school business principles or character, moral things, but it was a not so public facing expression of faith. And then you saw the rise of the non-denominational evangelical Christian movement, the bigger churches, the mega churches, Willow Creek in Chicago, the ones in Texas or California, wherever. You had much more of a evangelical uh, rising up, Dr. Dobson, focus on the family, venturing into, I just heard, I'll send you the link, excellent message, sermon on our role as Christians to engage in politics, that's biblical and founded in Scripture, and what Christ calls us to do and be. And so I think with the more active outworking of faith, more vocal about it from the younger generation, Charlie Kirk and his wife, and then working with whether it's Hillsdale or Liberty colleges, the Christian colleges. I think it's just become a much more open conversation where President Trump has found it, and Dr. Ben Carson certainly is vocal in his faith and everything. So I think he's found an environment within the political world that is also very much rooted and founded in that God country family, right?
yeah, definitely. It's we're seeing revival. We really are. Especially people coming from the new age, coming over and seeing it, because really you start on the path for truth that only leads one way.
Right. And
That's
we see so much more blatant in front of us what evil truly is. I mean, when you have
yeah.
Paris at the Olympics or the Super Bowl, blatantly satanic evil, Taylor Swift concert, that the pop culture has been taken over by evil, pure evil. And so the contrast, um, I think is just more clear both culturally and politically.
So we've been doing a series on Diddy. We started when the Cassie lawsuit. Interesting, I did a show just before Cassie's lawsuit dropped with a DJ who has been to Bad Boy Records. There's pictures of him and Aaliyah and Beyonce. He's a UK DJ, and he's in the, he's a real truther. Mark Devlin, and we'd done a show about is it the Boule, the Black Illuminati? We did a series, then we started digging into the Cassie lawsuit. Then we found the video of a gentleman called Jonathan Oddie who went into the Trump Doral hotel and started shooting it up.
Oh,
In 20, I think it's either 2016 or 2018, I'm not sure. Jonathan Oddie. And he was thrown in prison, and police interviews are out there. And he was saying that he'd been held hostage by Diddy as a sex slave, and that they were trafficking kids. They were moving drugs around the country in the Ciroc vodka. They were money laundering, the whole lot. Exactly Cassie's story that she brought out in 23. Now, listen to this. That guy has not been in front of a judge yet. He's been sitting in Miami-Dade for 8 years.
wow.
Because obviously he's going to be one of the victims. But the satanic stuff, and I do believe we are watching the destruction of Hollywood right now. Like everything will come out,
100%.
and I do believe people are getting shocked by the horrors that are coming out of Diddy's parties. People have been calling for the Epstein files, who was on the guest list, what was actually going on. Now, through research and articles and from the boards, like the Q boards, there was some horrific stuff. And we know about the organ harvesting. It's so
Oh, yeah.
horrific. And we
It's
know that Jeffrey Epstein was into eugenics, messing with the humans, with animals. Bill Gates was a regular there. It is so horrific. The public wouldn't be able to cope.
no,
I
and
do believe,
well,
I do believe Diddy thing is getting, because people are like horrified of what's going on there. And I do believe when Trump comes in, they are going to be released. And it's up to us if you want to go and see it. But I do
right.
believe that the whole Diddy stuff is kind of setting up for the other horrific stuff that's been going on.
One, and we've seen the
Satanic rituals at
progression of that as
CERN,
well.
human
Just like,
sacrificing.
yeah, all of it. Like, just like the reveals over the last 9 years of how our
Yeah,
politics was rigged and the elections and the corruption and how systematic and how big, Trump said the swamp was bigger and deeper than even he imagined. And so we're seeing the the reveal of that. I also think there's been more reveals, more revelations to the people, not by revelations in a God prophecy
no,
sense,
no,
more in a, exposure to the general public to where they, the scales off their eyes are being peeled away so that they can see what they see and hear what they hear and understand. And most of them can't comprehend the depth of it. You and I and your audience, most likely, the more engaged people who have dug down those, jumped all in down those rabbit holes and just learned things that we never wanted to. You can't unknow them once you know them, and you can't unsee them once you see them. We understand how it all plays into the whole structure, global structure,
no,
political, social, economic, all of that tied together. P. Diddy is not an isolated, it's not a vertical
no.
silo, it's a very intricate web of everything globally of the evil that has just been um unchecked for decades and decades, maybe centuries. Um,
And we still seem to be, I mean, the idiot that we've got here. I mean, I don't really know much about what is going on politically here in the UK because my eyes are always focused on the States because what goes on with you guys is gonna
Right,
the
right,
domino effect. You are God's chosen. You know, you are one nation under God. You've got this contract, whatever, with with God, and it's all going to start with America, because if America goes, and God's, I don't, it's not over. America, I will not fall. God will not let that happen. Um, but you've this Ukraine nonsense that's still. I mean, I can't believe we've still got people around near where I live with flags out and ribbons around their gates. I mean, it's the child trafficking hub of the Northern Hemisphere. Money laundering. I do believe there was a Wuhan lab, wasn't there, near, in a town, they were saying. How's America dealing with the Ukraine, and do they believe that Ukraine needs more money? Because obviously Biden and Starmer were in talks whether to give them long range missiles, winding Putin up and said if that happens, they're taking it upon themselves. And here we are, a tiny little island, playing games with Putin, who all he wanted was us, NATO, and everyone to stay away from his borders. He doesn't want them. He's already called them all out as paedophiles and Satanists.
right. Yeah. Well, and I
And
think some of this,
Ukraine, there's a guy who was an actor, off his head on coke most of the time. You've got actors going over to visit. I remember when it all started, and I didn't believe it. At first, I did not believe there was anything going on in Ukraine, because you had Sean Penn going over there. He was the first celebrity to
oh
go over
yeah.
there to do filming. And it's like, this isn't real. So how's America dealing with money, your money, going to Ukraine, as well as illegal immigration?
Well, I think people have been naive of not, again, understanding what Ukraine is really about. I mean, I pray that what really has been going on with the Ukraine war has been a military operation to clean it out under the guise of war. Okay, that's again my gut or my maybe wishful thinking, but I feel like you can make an argument to say that's the case if
Yeah,
the White
absolutely.
Hats are
Absolutely.
cleaning out things. I remember back in 2011, I lived in Germany for a time, and I read the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo book series. I don't know if you've read those, Stieg Larsson. Um,
I think I read the first one.
yeah, you should, if you have time, read the trilogy. Because it was interesting from being over in Europe, reading that series, back in the day when your phones didn't work over in Europe. So you had to get a little handy at Aldi and have a SIM card over there. But so you'd bring a book on the trains, right? And just read. And so I made it through the trilogy there on the trains and thought it interesting because it talks about a lot of the sex trafficking and evils that like the post-Nazi that they weren't defeated, they just went underground within Eastern Europe and Western Europe. And so that kind of put Eastern Europe on my radar. So when Ukraine came out with, the biolabs and the trafficking and organ trafficking, that was a hub of Eastern Europe where all of that was occurring, it made sense to me. Um, and so when the white, under the guise, if you believe, putting my conspiracy hat on now, of, the operation, the White Hats, Trump was part of the military plan, laws and orders to clean up the country, that he went around and
We've
had,
been doing shows on it since 2018.
right, the capitulation tour, going to getting these other countries in line. Then it makes sense that they're cleaning out Ukraine. You can also see why the deep state, in quotations, or the evil uniparty are trying to make Ukraine such a big thing, because it's all a big money laundering operation for the politicians and the NGOs. I mean, we showed at the 1A Film Fest, This is Treason, trafficked, and it's the, you know, the case that J.J. Carroll, who's a retired border agent, and Ryan Matta, the filmmaker, clearly makes, substantiated by their documentation, is that the United States is the largest trafficker, human
Yes.
trafficker on the globe.
Yeah.
Keeping these NGOs and the open borders as a well-oiled operation for
Yeah.
money and blackmail and harvesting and sex trafficking and organ harvesting and all of it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, talking about the white hats in control, and you know, it's almost like we're watching like a movie play out. I keep bringing up the British royal family because when Trump went on his tour, he went to the Middle East and he came to the UK and then kind of finished with Russia, with Putin handing him the ball, saying the ball's in your court. Well, before that, he came to the UK and
Right.
nobody ever walks in front of the Queen. Nobody. And she stood back and let Trump walk in front of
Right.
her
Waved him
while they're doing
forward.
the. Then he went to Saudi Arabia. They
Yeah.
handed him the victor's sword. Then we had Russia, Putin handing him the ball's in your court. Then we suddenly had Prince Philip, the Queen's husband, who looked like he'd just been dug up anyway, but die. Never in royal history has the head of the royal family not led a funeral procession. Prince Philip was taken to his final resting place in an old Land Rover, and the Queen travelled in the back of the brigade
Oh,
in a
that's
car. Right? I'm sorry, that doesn't. And they tried saying it was one that he restored during the war. Shut up, was it? And then we have Prince William and Kate living in a 4-bedroom cottage on the grounds of Windsor Castle. The future heir with all the palaces, they're living in a 4-bedroom cottage. What's going on?
that's interesting.
And then
Yeah.
we had
Well,
Kate
like,
Middleton disappear for
right.
how many months? And I started the hashtag Where's Kate because we did a show about January the 17th it was. And I said, no one's seen Kate Middleton. No visits. Nothing. Then she was bungled out of hospital without, again, royal protocol, thanking the staff that they do and the photos. None of that. She was bungled away in a van. I phoned the local papers and asked them, had they ever seen Kate Middleton there? Did they not find it funny that there was no visit from any of her family, her children, in the entire time that she was there? Doesn't anyone find that a bit odd? So I do believe the royal family are finished as well. This is the destruction of the deep state. The people are seeing it play out. They're seeing the evil that's going on. And have you noticed every person who's been going up and endorsing Kamala is on the Diddy freak off list?
Right. Or the Epstein or the
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, that if you have, again, eyes to see and you're paying attention, you're not just looking at isolated dots, but you're able to look at them instead as pieces of the puzzle being put together, then you're getting the whole picture,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? They're not dots in a constellation where you could draw any number of things from those isolated dots. Rather, they're pieces of the puzzle that once you put them in place, you have the big picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this what goes on now with the white hats, it's going to affect every single person in the world, here especially. I mean, the Five Eyes and the spying that the UK did under Theresa May is absolutely shocking. The UK were absolutely totally embedded with the Steele dossier and the following, like completely involved. So I'm just praying that Trump knows how much support he's now got in this country. It used to be a lonely road for me. But now I'm getting like fist pumped if I got my t-shirt on, my Fight Back t-shirt, or I'm wearing my MAGA hat. Um, so yeah, it's
Well, and I
what a
felt
time
back
to
in
be alive.
2015, 2016, when he went around to the world leaders, not only, not understanding at the time, maybe looking at 2020, only more sure of what, but it was always said, America, the light on the hill, or as America goes, so goes the world, or we're the
Absolutely.
last stand for freedom for the rest of the world. Whether those things are any are even more true today, I felt like Trump was going around to the other leaders too to restore. When Trump started talking about build the wall back in 2015, before we even knew, how out of control the border was or would be, or what all was going on at the border, I said to people, I think he's using the wall as a literal, concrete, pun intended, example of what was happening to the United States as a country. Our sovereignty was being eroded and intentionally destroyed by the globalists so that America would not be able to stand as that bastion of freedom, as that example of individual liberty. And when I lived in Germany, my uh, German friends would say, "You're not free in America. We're more free here than you are." And I'd be like, "Wait a minute, what?" And then you look at it, and you began to see that was true because government had become so pervasive under the guise of safety, had taken more and more rights, right? Especially since 9/11. And so I felt like when Trump talked about the wall, it was to give people something literal that they could wrap their brains around of what he meant and what he was saying. So I think that
Yeah.
some of those, and
Um,
and now people have a better understanding of everything that he was talking about back in 2015, 2016. It's only
no, he's
more
been
true
right about
now.
everything. He's been right about everything. The one thing that hasn't, he was convinced. I mean, they may still do it, pack the court, but they would have done it by now, wouldn't they, if they were going to go down that route?
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about Film Fest. What's it all about? Can us
Well,
over here in the UK get involved? Tell us all about it.
the great thing about our small world is that of www, right? You can log on, and even though you're in the UK, you can still watch our 1A Film Fest. So if your audience wants to go to, and they should, I'd strongly encourage it to go to 1afilmfest.com. Pre-order your post-production package. We are in the process of putting that together. A few years ago, because I had volunteered at different film festivals in my past. I've written some screenplays. I took screenwriting in college. Love the power of films. Worked as marketing PR person for independent documentary, and so that was kind of in my wheelhouse. And a couple of years ago, I just had the idea we need to do a 1A Film Fest, First Amendment Film Fest, and partly because I was getting kicked off of Twitter, they took down my YouTube. I think I'm in the top 1,000 of Twitter accounts that were censored over the last, 9 years.
You had a really, really big following, didn't you? I never got mine back. Did you ever get yours back?
No, not nearly to the degree. And I'm actually writing about that in my first chapter of Pardon of Innocence books. That will be coming out in 2025. So you can stay tuned for that. I'll come back on your show when I can.
Yeah,
Talk about it.
absolutely.
Yeah. But talking about the censorship piece, so what's First Amendment Film Festival seemed a way. There were all these independent filmmakers on our side coming out with great content, the power of film to be able to show and impact you. And I love that film is both personal and private, right? You watch it in community, you're gathered together in a theater or in, the comfort of your home as community, and yet it's an individual experience. It's very personal. You're watching it, your own mind is engaging and feeling and thinking. And one of the things I learned in script writing was that when you write film, you have to, or movie, video medium, is you can only show, so you only have sense of sight and sound, right? So if someone's, you can't get inside their head like you can with fiction
Yeah.
describing a character, their thoughts, whatever. You have to show it. So if someone's nervous, then you show that by, like, they tapped on the table, right? So you get that nervous behavior to show the internal anxiety of the character. So I love, and that's a little geeky there, but I loved the medium in terms of being able to impact uh, a person's thought, challenge their beliefs, give them new ideas. Every good film will make you laugh, make you cry, make you mad, make you happy. All of those things are elements within any good production. And so I had the idea for the 1A Film Festival that you run a, I had volunteered for a number of years out at Santa Barbara. They run a really great film festival in terms of you get your program, you have all the slate of films, you um, pick out your movies you want to go to. They had, director forums, panel discussion, all part of the film festival in a great location. And so I had this idea. I got the 1A Film Fest. I had designed a little logo that was very cutesy, bicentennial looking. And I had talked to David about
Love
it. And I
it.
said, we really need to do a film festival because by then he had done writing history. Um,
Yeah.
and then which led to J6, A True Timeline, Bloody Hill, all of that. And I said, we really need to do this for our side. And so finally, David said the timing's right. We put together a weekend down in Greenville, Texas at the Texan Theater. So very iconic, great place, symbolism of Texas, of the Lone Star State and freedom. Our First Amendment is, you know, um, what supports our Second Amendment. The two go hand in hand. And so I'm putting just a great team, David, Robert and Jamie and Robert Agee, Andrew Mullenix, talented filmmaker, did Bloody Hill with David Summerall. Great team. And we had a whole weekend of a film festival. It was a VIP because the Texas Theater only holds X number of people. It's a dinner theater set up perfect. It was beautiful. Robert and Jamie made sure we had all the swag for marketing and had invited some filmmakers. Of course, we were going to feature David's J6, A True Timeline, which Tucker Carlson, when he interviewed David, said J6, A True Timeline is a film that everyone in America needs to see. And I would
It was
extend that
incredible.
to the UK as well.
Yeah.
And of course, I worked closely with David over these years. We wrote the first article on January 27, 2022, about the 5 deaths of January 6th, with the video evidence from Taylor Hanson being next to Ashley Babbitt when she was shot, Philip Anderson being next to Roseanne Boylan when she was murdered, all of that. So very involved in it. So we knew the J6 piece. I've worked with Suzanne Monk on the J6 Pardon Project, as I mentioned previously. Um, and then as word got out that we were going to put this film fest together, other filmmakers wanted in. So we ended up having, I knew JJ Carroll. I had interviewed him several times on my show, introduced to him a number of years ago as a, border agent. And so I knew JJ had his film he was coming out with, and I had asked him to be a guest on my show. And then I said, well, he said, when the timing, and I said, well, maybe we can have you premiere your film at the 1A Film Fest. And so that motivated Ryan, his film partner, to finish up in time for the film fest. And then David got Mickey Willis with the Plandemic series. I mean, these are top line filmmakers. Professor David Clements with Let My People Go, about the election steal. David Professor David Clements has been instrumental in the J6 Mail Project, really advocating for the J6ers. So that was one of our films. We ended up with a total of 12 films. Mark Sutherland, our friend from your backyard, We had his two short films to kind of break up the tempo and pace and introduce some fiction films, that are certainly fit with the theme of the weekend. And then Mike Smith, who is the Hollywood stunt guy who turned filmmaker, did Out of the Shadows, which went global.
Yeah, brilliant.
Hollywood. And then so his sequel, Into the Light, we showed that Sunday. Bloody Hill, Writing History. Chris Burgard, who was again out of Hollywood, Tour Duty back in the day, that TV show, independent filmmaker. His War on Truth, we showed that Saturday night. That's about the January 6th. And then Adam Riva, who did The Crucible of Donald Trump, we wrapped up the weekend with his film showing, 70% he said is the mainstream media of their attacks on Donald Trump. So we ended up with just an incredible slate of movies that we showed. Started Friday night through Sunday. Everything beautifully packed. We had filmmaker panel discussion. We had awards, the first annual 1A Film Fest awards. My vision for it is that the 1A Film Fest will become the Cannes, as you're familiar with in your backyard down in France, or the Sundance, is probably the most known
Yeah.
in the United States Film Festival. That 1A Film Fest becomes that for the MAGA movement, the conservative, the truth films, the independent. I've said over the past that one independent media, podcasts like yours, broadcasts, those are to the mainstream media that independent filmmakers are to Hollywood. They're both
Yeah.
have taken those two traditionally very gate kept, very controlled mediums of communication, and now everybody has access, right? You can put together a great film, put it out there, and people can see your work. You no longer have to beg an agent, pay through the nose to try and get your script made into a film. You no longer
Yeah.
have to, work your way through the casting couch to be able to get a job on a new show. You can just do your thing, right? Which is awesome. And so that was the motivation behind the 1A Film Fest. And then back to my little logo that I had designed when David and I started working more towards making it come to fruition. He's like, well, we're gonna just tweak the logo a little bit. And I'm like, oh, I like my logo. And fortunately,
You have to send it over to me. I want to see it.
oh, I will. They overruled me on the logo because here, I'll send it to you. Maybe you can put it up on, or you can take a look at it. Um, because what they came up with was he and Andrew, uh, it's phenomenal. I'll email this to you.
Yeah, do. Yeah. I'll include it on the post.
Uh, one. And the metaphor is that, just like the guns are to our Second Amendment, the movie camera. And let me also add the promo video clip that Andrew and David did, which is phenomenal. I'm gonna see if I can add that in there. Insert. Because so they made it look like the movie camera actually looks like AR-15, I think is the correct gun. But it's so cool. All right, I just sent it to you. So give it
Okay,
a
I'll include it
minute.
in the post.
So they call it our Armory of Truth. And each of the films, and the reason we packaged our mission was ahead of the 2024 election. So we started Friday night with the This Is Treason premiere, world premiere. Here's where we are at now with this border crisis after 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration. And then Saturday morning, we did the go back through COVID, what the pandemic did to the world. That was the setup for the 2020 election steal, and then January 6th, so that they say the cover up is worse than the crime. the crime of the election steal was covered up by January 6th, and then where we are now. And so every film was a piece of the puzzle to give that whole picture so people could realize where we've been. You know, the world lockdown, the global pandemic was so surreal. And now we're almost like so far away from it, even though it was just a few short years ago. People, it's like you have to stop and think a minute, like, oh yeah, it was so weird.
Oh, but
That-
we've still got people here going out in masks,
Yeah, yeah. And now you look at them and think that's
I
in
just get triggered.
2020.
I was
What are
getting,
you
because I never
doing?
put one on my face once. Not once
No,
did one go near my face. No stick up my nose. Do you know what I mean? Nothing. And it would trigger me. You'd have people cycling and they're
yeah,
wearing a mask
that's it.
outside on a country bike ride.
Right, right. And that was all because of the fear that they instilled in
It's,
people.
yeah, exactly. It's crazy. I mean, here in the UK, people were standing on their front doorsteps on a Wednesday night, clapping for the NHS. So,
So
have you voted? Have you got in and voted, or are
I
you going on the
did. I went
day?
out. Um,
Are you?
yeah, so I voted early, banked my vote, and we'll see, what happens.
Well, what I was hoping, just to whoever can, because obviously I'm having guests on every day from over there. I was hoping that maybe the following day, if everyone's got a chance, we could do all of us on a group call.
Oh,
Um,
that would be fun.
just to the aftermath as such. I mean, we probably won't get the results the same day, but who knows? Maybe we have a brief discussion where let's see. But that's what I thought would be good.
Well, the post-election, right. So the fear is that people are going to be, the left is not going to accept it still, because if you remember back to 2016 and the burning cars and the burning down things and the riots that ensued after that, um, you know, and I think there was probably some intentional creating that kind of crisis and making it seem
Oh, of
like a
course,
normal
of
reaction so they
course.
could set the trap for the J6ers, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. 1 million. Where can
go
people follow
to,
you?
well, I still have a Rumble channel, but I mostly just do special shows occasionally now, because I'm supposed to be focusing on writing my book. But I
Okay.
am
What
at
about your social media? Are you on?
yeah,
You're on
I'm on
Facebook.
Truth Social at Tamara Leigh and back on X at Tamara Leigh LLC, and then on Rumble. So J6
I'll put all
part
the links.
project, we're hoping to see that through. But yeah, those are my socials. And then articles at stophate.com. David, Tim, and I with American Gulag Chronicles, we're now on Redacted Media. So we'll be launching that and doing a little bit more there. But yeah,
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on
thank
tonight.
you.
And hopefully we'll all have a catch up on the 6th of November.
Yeah, we'll see how the world turns, huh?
Thank you so much, Tamara Leigh.
Thank
God
you.
bless you.
Thank you to your audience too. Lots of
God
prayers.
bless.
Bye.
Thank you so much. So that's it, libertytactics.co.uk. If you feel led to, buy us a coffee, would very much appreciate it. We're going to try and go with StreamYard. We're going to see how that works out. See if we can start going and do more live shows. Check us out on TikTok. Jason Nota's running that. Liberty Tactics. We're on Facebook and all the other social medias. Check out Catherine's website, exposingthelie.info, and obviously publicchildprotectionwise.org. That's it. We'll be back tomorrow. Good night.